Late yesterday evening, the Trump administration introduced a suspension of a variety of foreign worker visas used by large companies. Now, today, those very same companies have been crying out in protest at the decision. They've slammed the visa changes, which the Trump administration not only expanded existing restrictions on green cards until the end of the year, but introduced a whole raft of new restrictions. Under the executive order announced last night, intercompany transfers, the L1, will be suspended until the end of the year. J1s for students will be barred entry until next year. And, of course, the H1 and H2B visas for agricultural and specialty occupations, they will also be banned until suspended until the end of the year. Some very minor exceptions if you work in the food supply industry and various guest workers for agriculture in certain circumstances. Oh, and national security, if your work is deemed to be for national security purposes, and the fight against COVID as well. Now, the changes affect roughly 130,000 people. Those involved include mainly skilled tech workers. They include professions ranging from au pairs to managers. And in the nature of full disclosure, even my own partner, a journalist, is going to be affected because of the L1. Of the countries involved, India would be most affected. It accounts for around 3/4 of H1B applications. China gets roughly 12%, Canada 1%, and other countries account for less than 1%. Google CEO Sundar Pichai, who's himself moved from India to the US, says he's disappointed by the decision. Facebook says the move uses the coronavirus pandemic to justify limiting immigration. Talk about this. Jason Oxman is the president and CEO of the Information Technology Industry Council. Joins me from Arlington, Virginia. Joins me via Skype. The measure was known about and rumoured for several weeks. Organisations such as yourselves lobbied very hard against it. Many companies did, including Cisco's CEO. The administration ignored you. Why?
Well, it's a fair question, and Richard, thanks for having me on to talk about this important issue. We know that the administration has been targeting these high-skilled immigrants for months, if not years, and the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to stimulate the U.S. economy and explain a loss of a lot of jobs here has unfortunately become an excuse for the administration to do this. So I would say what the administration moved forward on here is something they've been trying to do for quite some time. We've opposed it. We've continued to oppose it. And we're very disappointed to see these harmful actions taken that will have the perverse effect of harming the U.S. economy.
So the argument, if you read the president's proclamation, is that a well-functioning and structured immigration policy will support the economy, but that these visas have been abused. There is some truth in that, isn't there? In terms of the H1B and L1s used for where they can't get H1Bs, there has been abuse.
There, in fact, has been an enormous benefit to the U.S. economy from the availability of high-tech immigrants coming to the U.S. using all of these visas. The L1 visas you mentioned, for example, are simply a means for global corporations, including large technology companies, to move employees around from different office headquarters. So, for example, if a large tech company wants to start a new project here in the U.S. that may employ and bring back hundreds or thousands of employees, and the project manager for that is an executive who happens to be overseas right now, and they want to bring them here to start that project. Now they can't do it because of the L1. That's not anything that makes any sense. In fact, it harms U.S. economic recovery. The H-1B visas that you talked about, Richard, these are visas that are used by high-skilled immigrants who want to come make their lives here in the U.S. You know, about half of the largest technology companies in the U.S. were started by immigrants or children of immigrants. We are a nation of immigrants in the United States. It's really important that we not turn our backs to these high-skilled immigrants who want to come make lives, start companies, become entrepreneurs here in the U.S., or students who want to do the same. They're going to turn to other countries going to do it, and that's going to harm the U.S. economy.
Jason, I would agree with you, except for the president's point that, you know, you've got 40 million unemployed, you've got an unemployment rate of 13 to 14%. Now, surely many of those jobs at a time of can now be filled, certainly on the H-1Bs, by Americans. The talent pool and the job pool is much greater than it was 6 months ago.
Well, I think it's an important point to address, Richard. If we look back to the unemployment level in these high-tech areas prior to the pandemic, back in January of this year, it was under 3%. That's really below the level at which the Federal Reserve considers full employment. So, in fact, there is demand, there has been demand, and there will be demand for high-tech immigrants, high-skilled immigrants to come to the U.S. and continue to fill those jobs alongside Americans. And, of course, we're talking here about the next generation of Americans. We all once were immigrants to the United States, and our families came here and started their lives and built companies here, and that's what we're looking to have happen with the high-tech industry as well. So I think those jobs that you hear about in the proclamation, it really is an excuse that the administration has used. The authority they're seeking to use to limit these visas requires them to make a finding in the national interest. And I think here the finding is just not based on sound legal ground, and I think it will be successfully challenged.
Jason Oxman, thank you.